The Galactic Concord had seen many strange things in the long history of the stars, but nothing confused them more than the signal that appeared one quiet morning on the border of their space. It came without warning, without pattern, and without any known code attached to it. At first, the analysts believed it was a mistake, a ghost signal, perhaps, caused by radiation storms or drifting debris colliding with an old transmitter. But as the hours passed, the strange pulse continued with perfect rhythm, steady, clear, and deliberate. Inside the Concord's main communication hall, Ambassador Thaleen of the Selluari stood with her long, glass-like fingers curled behind her back. The hall was bright and full of floating screens that displayed the signal's structure. Thaleen's people were known for calm minds and careful study, and she carried herself with the same graceful patience. "Is it a distress call?" she asked softly. The lead analyst, a short and nervous Vushal with shimmering scales, nodded uncertainly. "It follows the same three-stage pattern usually used for distress. Ambassador, but the origin point." He paused and glanced at the star map with a helpless expression. "The origin point is from a world classified as Category Red." The entire room went silent. Even the screens seemed to hum more quietly. Category Red planets were not places where life was expected to survive, let alone evolve intelligence. These worlds were unstable, violent, flooded with dangerous predators and harsh climates. Most species of the Concord could not even land on such planets without protective suits and heavy shield generators. The idea that someone was living there long enough to send a signal was almost impossible. Thaleen narrowed her eyes, her silver pupils reflecting the glowing map. Perhaps the signal bounced from the planet but originated elsewhere? "That was our first thought," the analyst admitted. "But we checked. The signal is local, direct, from that world." The ambassador took a slow breath. The Concord had always hoped to find new allies, or at least peaceful neighbors. They preferred diplomacy and cooperation over conflict. But this was confusing, dangerous, unexpected. Still, they had a duty. "Prepare a delegation," Thaleen ordered. "If someone is in distress, we must respond." Within hours, the Concord assembled a small fleet, mostly science ships and diplomatic vessels. Their ships were elegant and smooth, shaped like flowing curves of crystal and metal. They traveled not for war but for comfort, with soft lights, open halls, and peaceful designs that calmed the mind. Ambassador Thaleen boarded the flagship, Harmony's Reach. As the fleet began its journey, she watched the stars stretch into long rivers of light. She felt a strange mix of curiosity and concern. The Concord had encountered many civilizations, most gentle and soft-spoken. But something about this signal felt different, like a door opening into the unknown. After 2 days of travel, they reached the star system where the signal originated. Immediately, the sensors reacted with loud alerts. "It's definitely a death world," one officer reported. "Gravity fluctuations, electromagnetic storms, oxygen-rich but unstable atmosphere. Temperature swings are violent. Estimated danger level: severe." The hologram of the planet rotated above the central table. Its continents were scarred with deep canyons. Clouds twisted violently in the upper atmosphere. There were signs of volcanic activity, ice regions, deserts, and vast oceans, all extreme. Thaleen stared at the terrifying planet. How could any species live here? No one answered. As the fleet took up cautious positions near the planet, the strange pulse of the distress signal increased in strength. Something or someone wanted their attention. The communications officer gasped. "Ambassador, another ship is approaching." "A Concord ship?" she asked. "No. Unknown design." Everyone watched the display as a vessel appeared from the far side of the planet. Its shape was rough and angular, built for durability rather than beauty. The hull was patched in many places with mismatched metal plates. Heat shielding had been burned and repaired countless times. Whatever species made that ship, they had not lived easy lives. The officer struggled to find a polite word. It looks Tough. Thaleen agreed silently. The ship moved with purpose, not elegance. It seemed more like a survivor than a traveler. As it approached the fleet, her heart beat faster. "Scan them," she ordered. "Already doing so," replied the sensor technician. "Ambassador, their environmental tolerance levels are extremely high. They can survive radiation levels that would kill most of us. Their heat shielding is heavy, and their engines show signs of operating under extreme conditions." This was not what the Concorde expected of a peaceful diplomatic mission. The unknown ship slowed, and finally came to a halt only a short distance away from the flagship. Then, they received a simple message: "We come in peace," requesting docking permission. Thaleen exchanged looks with her officers. Whoever they were confident enough to approach a fleet they had never met. But the message was clear and polite. "Allow it," she decided, "but prepare safety protocols." When the unknown vessel docked, the Concorde's diplomatic team waited near the airlock. Thaleen stood at the front, her posture dignified, her expression calm. She expected small, fragile beings. Most spacefaring species were gentle and lightly built. But when the airlock slid open, she froze. The beings who stepped out were tall, broad-shouldered, and heavy-boned. Their skin showed signs of sun, wind, and storms. Their clothes were practical, reinforced with straps and equipment. Their eyes were alert, sharp, and full of focus. They moved with confidence, as if the foreign environment meant nothing to them. Thaleen had never seen a species so physically strong. The leader stepped forward and smiled a friendly gesture, though on his rugged face it looked strangely fierce. "Greetings," he said in simple, clear speech. "We are humans, from a world called Earth." The Concorde delegation stared, stunned into silence. Humans. The word was simple, almost soft, but everything about them looked tough enough to survive the harshest of conditions. Earth must have been the Category Red planet. "Ambassador Thaleen of the Celluari," she said, recovering her composure. "Welcome aboard Harmony's Reach. We received a distress signal and believed someone needed help." The human captain nodded. "We tracked that signal too. It wasn't sent by us, but it drew us here. And we figured someone might be in trouble." Thaleen blinked. "You tracked it? From the Death World?" Captain Hale, she learned his name later, smiled again. "Well, it's home. Not the easiest place to grow up. But it makes you resourceful." Resourceful, that was an understatement. The humans walked into the ship's meeting hall with relaxed confidence. For a moment, Thaleen wondered how being so powerful-looking could also seem so calm and friendly. It was strange, almost contradictory, but as she observed them further, she noticed they looked around with curiosity, not aggression. They admired the smooth walls, the soft lights, the comfortable chairs. They asked polite questions. They joked with one another in low voices, showing humor even in a first-contact situation. But beneath their friendliness was a quiet strength, a presence that filled the room like a force of nature. Thaleen could not help feeling fascinated and slightly uneasy. If these beings evolved on a death world, what else were they capable of? The meeting began, and Captain Hale explained their journey. They had followed the distress signal across several systems, repairing their ship along the way. Their world had trained them to be survivors, engineers, problem solvers. They were used to storms, predators, and natural disasters. Living on Earth had made them adaptable in ways the Concorde could hardly imagine. But when Hale mentioned the source of the distress signal, the mood changed. "We pinpointed it to a structure near this system," he said. "Some kind of ancient defense system. Old, but still active. And dangerous." Thaleen felt a chill run through her crystalline spine. The humans hadn't come for help. They had come because someone or something might need them. The ambassador suddenly understood something important. The Concorde had expected a fragile species seeking protection. Instead, they had met Deathworlders, strong, resilient beings prepared for danger. And now, standing before them, were the first humans the galaxy had ever seen. The meeting hall aboard Harmony's Reach grew quiet, As the humans completed their first presentation, every delegate from the Galactic Concord sat still, processing what they had just learned. Ambassador Thaleen, usually calm and composed, felt a strange pressure in her chest. It was not fear, but something close to awe. Humans. A species from a death world. A species that evolved on a planet full of storms, dangerous wildlife, unstable climates, and unpredictable natural cycles. And yet, these humans stood here easily, as if danger was simply part of daily life. Captain Hale noticed the silence. He looked at Thaleen and gave another soft smile. I know this is a lot to take in, but we mean no harm. We just want to help. His tone was warm, his eyes were steady, but the ambassador still couldn't stop studying him. His posture was straight, without any sign of nervousness. His breathing remained slow, even though he stood in an alien ship full of unknown species. The more she watched him, the more she understood. This species was built for survival. Please, Thaleen said, tell us more about this distress signal. You believe it is not your own? Hale nodded. Correct. Humans didn't send it. But we recognized the structure of the signal. It matched an old emergency broadcast pattern used by a long-dead empire we discovered traces of on our journey. A low murmur spread through the Concord delegates. Ancient empires were usually a dangerous topic. They often left behind weapons, automated machines, or traps that could threaten entire regions of space. The ambassador raised a hand to quiet the room. Where do you believe this signal came from? Hale tapped a small device on his wrist. A holographic map appeared, showing a large ring-like structure floating in deep space. Parts of it were broken, other sections missing entirely. This is where the signal originates, he explained. A broken Dyson ring. Something inside it is still active. One of the Celluari scientists gasped softly. Those structures are millions of years old. Nothing should still be working inside them. Hale gave a small shrug. Maybe something shouldn't, but something is. Ambassador Thaleen folded her hands. And you wish for us to go there? We want to go together, Hale replied gently. Whatever sent the signal might be in danger, or it might be something dangerous itself. Thaleen could feel the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. The Concord had always been cautious explorers. But the humans? They seemed ready to jump directly into danger. Captain Hale, she said kindly, may I ask something personal? Of course. Thaleen's silver eyes flicked between him and the other humans. 3 men, 2 women. All strong, all calm. How does a species from such a dangerous planet choose peace so easily? Your bodies show signs of hardship, yet your voices are soft. The humans exchanged small smiles, as if they had heard this before. One of the women, a tall engineer named Riley, responded. We come from a world with many dangers, yes. But we also learned early that working together saves lives. Cooperation is part of our nature, another man chuckled. On Earth, everything tries to kill you at least once. You either fight each other, or you team up. Most of us choose teamwork, Hale added. Conflict exists everywhere, Ambassador. But peace is a choice, and humanity tries to make that choice when possible. Thaleen studied their faces. There was no deception there, only honesty. Only sincerity. It made their strength even more impressive. Slowly, the ambassador nodded. Very well. The Concord will travel with you to this Dyson ring. The humans breathed out in relief, and Hale extended his hand toward Thaleen. Thank you. Thaleen looked at the hand for a moment before gently placing one of her crystal fingers against it. Human customs were strange, but pleasant. We go together, she agreed, preparing for the journey. As the meeting ended, both crews moved to ready their ships. The humans returned to their rugged vessel, which looked even more battered compared to the smooth beauty of the Concord ships, but there was something charming in its scars. Every mark looked like a story. Ambassador Thaleen stood at the window of the observation deck, watching the human ship undock. Unusual, aren't they? Said Karen, a feathery member of the Alaran species, walking up beside her. Very. Thaleen replied. Their bodies are built for harshness, yet they carry themselves with such friendliness. Kryn nodded. Deathworlders. I never thought I would meet one in my lifetime. Neither did I, Thaleen whispered. The fleet began their journey toward the Dyson Ring. The Concord ships moved like flowing silver fish, while the human vessel followed behind them like a sturdy rock carried by the current. As they traveled, Thaleen received constant updates. Human technology was simple but strong. Their engines were slower but extremely durable. Their life support systems were not elegant, but they could keep the crew alive through extreme conditions. It was clear that humans did not build for beauty, they built to survive. During the voyage, Hale and several other humans often visited the Harmony's Reach to share knowledge. They brought strange devices from Earth, explained their world's unpredictable weather, and told stories of mountains, oceans, forests, and storms. The Concord crew listened with wide eyes. Your world sounds terrifying, one young Seluari whispered. Hale chuckled. It's also beautiful. Life there is tough, but full of wonder. Thaleen found herself smiling quietly. These humans were unlike anyone she had ever met. Approaching the Dyson Ring. After 2 days of travel, the fleet arrived at the edge of a massive structure floating in the darkness. Everyone fell silent. The Dyson Ring stretched across space like a giant broken halo. Huge metal beams hung loose, drifting lazily. Sections of the ring were cracked open like shattered glass. The scale was enormous, far larger than anything the Concord had ever built. Is it safe? Thaleen asked. Riley, the human engineer, studied her scanner. Mostly dead. But something is alive in there. Something big. The distress signal pulsed stronger. It's calling again, the communications officer whispered. But the message is distorted. Almost corrupted. Captain Hale narrowed his eyes. We need to get closer. The humans moved to the front of the observation deck, staring out at the ruined structure. Riley pointed. There. That inner ring section. That's where the power source still works. Thaleen didn't like the look of it. The broken section looked like a giant metal mouth, waiting silently in the darkness. The Concord ships activated gentle lights to scan the interior. Dust and debris floated everywhere. Strange shadows clung to the walls. What built this? One scientist murmured. Hale answered calmly. Something old. Something advanced. But whatever it was, they're long gone. Unlan. Or so they hoped. The scanner suddenly beeped loudly. Ambassador, a Concord officer cried. There's movement inside. The screen filled with red warnings. Structure activating, Riley said urgently. Something is powering up. Thaleen's heart froze. Defensive systems? Hale nodded slowly. Not just defensive. Something else. A low rumble echoed through the fleet as the Dyson Ring began to shift. Massive metal plates rotated, spinning slowly at first, then faster. A deep vibration filled the air. Lights came alive in the ring, cold, ancient, and unfriendly. What's happening? Thaleen demanded. Hale answered grimly. It's waking up. The distress signal abruptly changed tone, turning sharp and violent. The Concord ships backed away. Then the scanners displayed something terrifying. Primary weapon charging. Thaleen stared in horror. Primary weapon? Riley swallowed hard. This thing wasn't calling for help. It was calling for targets. The humans exchanged quick, focused looks. No panic, only readiness. Hale turned to Thaleen. His voice was calm but firm. Ambassador, we need to board that structure before it fires. Thaleen felt her breath shorten. You cannot be serious. It is unstable. It is dangerous. Hale nodded. Exactly why it has to be us. The ambassador looked at the humans, these strange, powerful, calm beings from a deadly world. They didn't fear danger. They were made for it. And now, they stood ready to protect the stars. The Dyson Ring hummed to life, its massive structure creaking as if it had been asleep for eons. The dark expanse of space stretched out around it, cold and empty. But inside the ring, there was movement, now an awakening, as though the very metal bones of the ancient structure were stirring from a deep slumber. The fleet pulled back, hovering just outside the range of the ring's massive guns. Ambassador Thaleen stood at the center of the command deck of Harmony's Reach, eyes fixed on the growing storm of activity unfolding on the holographic display. The scanners showed a new, disturbing pattern of energy pulses, building to an intensity she had never witnessed before. The weapon systems were charging, and the shielded surfaces of the Dyson ring were beginning to rotate slowly, as if aligning itself to launch something catastrophic. Beside her, Captain Hale crossed his arms, his face hard but calm. The humans didn't seem shocked or scared. Instead, they moved like warriors preparing for a fight. Practical. Focused. For a moment, Thaleen felt the weight of her own unease in the face of this ancient power. But she quickly pushed it down. "We need to get inside," Hale said, his voice low and controlled. "Now." Thaleen looked at him. "You're sure it's safe?" He nodded grimly. "It's the only way to stop this from firing. We can't let it target the Concorde fleet." The thought of a weapon of this scale capable of destroying entire fleets with a single shot made her skin crawl. The entire concept of a Dyson ring designed for destruction was almost unimaginable. But the signal had drawn them here, and now they were faced with a deadly reality. "We've located the entry point," Riley, the human engineer, said from her station. She was calm, but there was an edge to her voice. The urgency was building. "It's on the other side of the ring," Riley continued. "If we can get inside, we can access the main control hub and shut down the weapon systems. But the structure's old, there may be traps. If we're lucky, the systems are still intact enough to control." Thaleen nodded, but the worry didn't leave her mind. The humans were prepared for danger, but she had no idea what they might face inside the ring. It had been abandoned for millennia, untouched by any living species. Whatever remnants of the empire that had built it, they were long gone. The ring had become a forgotten relic until now. The descent. The human vessel, battered but steadfast, pulled away from the fleet and descended toward the entry point, a large open section of the ring that looked like a massive doorway, barely wide enough for the ship to pass through. It was a tight fit, and Thaleen could see the tension on the human crew's faces. They were used to challenges, but this was different. "Hold on," Riley said, her hands moving quickly over her controls. The ship's thrusters flared, stabilizing them as they approached the dark opening. The walls of the Dyson ring loomed closer, their dark, angular shapes a sharp contrast to the soft glow of the human ship. With a final push, the ship passed through the massive opening and entered the hollow interior of the Dyson ring. Inside, the atmosphere was eerily quiet. The vast, empty space stretched for miles, broken only by dark, jagged walls and ancient, decaying structures. The interior of the ring felt like a graveyard, abandoned and forgotten. But the pulsing energy that radiated from its core told another story. This place was far from lifeless. "The control hub should be in the center," Hale said, standing next to Riley as she adjusted the ship's navigation system. "Let's move quickly." The team moved swiftly, though not without caution. As the ship descended toward the central control hub, the first signs of the ring's age became visible. Parts of the structure were crumbling, with large sections of metal warped and decayed by time. The ancient machinery that had once powered the Dyson ring was still there. But it looked like a skeleton, a shadow of what it once was. "Everyone, stay alert," Hale ordered. "We don't know what we'll find in there." Thaleen couldn't help but glance around nervously. There was a sense of foreboding in the air, as if something terrible was lurking just beneath the surface of this place, waiting for them. Inside the ring, the ship came to a sudden halt in front of an ancient doorway, its metal doorways cracked and bent with age. Riley led the group as they disembarked, moving quickly and with purpose. The corridor ahead was dark and narrow, its walls covered in thick layers of dust. They moved quietly, their footsteps echoing through the empty halls. The first few steps inside revealed the sheer scale of the Dyson ring. Massive pipes and conduits ran along the walls, their metal exteriors rusted and pitted from centuries of disuse. It was a wonder any of it still worked at all. But the deeper they moved, the more the air felt charged with an unnatural energy. "This place is a tomb," one of the human soldiers muttered. "Maybe," Hale said. "But it's a tomb with a weapon. Let's focus." Thaleen followed closely behind, keeping her eyes on the surroundings. She had seen plenty of alien technology in her time with the Conquered, but nothing like this. The technology here was unlike anything she had ever encountered. It was ancient, but its power, its potential was terrifying. There was something unnerving about knowing that a weapon of unimaginable power was just waiting to be triggered. As they moved deeper, the lights flickered on, revealing a large chamber at the heart of the ring. It was like the center of a machine, a control hub full of blinking panels and long-forgotten consoles. At the far end of the room stood a massive control terminal, its surface covered in dust and debris. But despite the layers of age, it still pulsed with a faint, steady light. "This is it," Riley said, her voice tinged with both relief and anxiety. "The main control center." She moved forward, pulling open a panel on the side of the terminal. "We're going to need to manually override the primary weapon system," she said, glancing back at Hale. "It's locked behind several layers of security." Hale stepped forward, his expression focused. "We'll do what we need to do. Everyone, keep your eyes open. This could trigger something else." No sooner had he spoken than a loud bang echoed through the chamber, followed by a series of harsh mechanical clicks. The room's lights flickered, and the air seemed to grow heavier, charged with a static hum. The hair on the back of Thaleen's neck stood on end. "They know we're here," Hale said, his voice grim. "We need to hurry." Riley worked quickly, her fingers flying over the terminal. Sweat dripped down her face as she bypassed the first set of security protocols. The machines around them hummed louder, as if reacting to her efforts. Thaleen's heart raced as she glanced at the entrance, half expecting something to leap out at them from the shadows. Then, suddenly, the terminal lit up fully, its systems coming online with a burst of energy. A booming voice, deep and mechanical, filled the room. "Intruders detected. Systems engaged. Initiating defense protocol." Before anyone could react, the entire room shook as the floor beneath them began to pulse with an electric charge. The walls seemed to close in. And strange, mechanical arms dropped from the ceiling, swinging at them with deadly precision. "Move," Hale barked. "Get to cover." The humans reacted immediately. Riley ducked behind a control console, pulling out a small device and tossing it toward the center of the room. The device exploded in a burst of energy, temporarily disabling the defense mechanisms. "Go, go, go!" Hale shouted. The team rushed to the terminal, Riley's fingers flying over the interface. The room was alive with danger, but they couldn't afford to stop. They needed to shut down the weapon before it was too late. Thaleen followed, her heart pounding in her chest. The battle for control of the Dyson ring had begun. The countdown. Riley's fingers hovered over the final override sequence. "Almost there," she muttered. "Just a few more seconds." A loud alarm sounded, and the entire structure seemed to shake onse more. The weapon was charging, and they had no time left. 30 seconds, Hale yelled. "We're running out of time." Thaleen took a deep breath. The humans had prepared for this, but she had never felt more helpless in her life. She wasn't built for this kind of action. She was built for diplomacy, for calm discussions and carefully chosen words. But here, in this dark, crumbling chamber, words meant nothing. Only action would save them. And she had to trust these humans, these survivors from a world that had taught them to fight, to endure, to survive. Riley hit the final key, and the terminal lit up in a blinding flash. Weapon systems deactivated. The room fell silent. But as the hum of the weapon systems died away, a new sound filled the chamber. The room fell eerily silent as the final confirmation flashed across the terminal. Weapon systems deactivated. Thaleen exhaled, the tension in her chest loosening for the first time since they entered the Dyson ring. For a moment, she simply stood there, stunned by the hum of quiet power that filled the room. But Hale's voice cut through the silence like a blade. Stay sharp. It's not over yet. The voice was calm, but it was clear. The danger wasn't gone. The room around them was still alive with energy, the walls humming with ancient power. The lights flickered, then stabilized, casting strange, angular shadows across the space. But no more alarms blared. The immediate threat had been neutralized. Riley, her hands still hovering over the control panel, glanced back at Hale. We shut down the primary weapon, but I'm seeing strange data here. There's a secondary system that's still active, and it looks like it's preparing to reboot the weapon. What do you mean? Reboot? Thaleen asked, stepping closer to the terminal. It's like it's trying to reset itself, Riley explained, her voice focused. It wants to start the whole system again. But this time, it's going to be more difficult to stop. A cold shiver ran down Thaleen's spine. A weapon that could restart itself? That was a terrifying thought. If they didn't act quickly, they would be right back where they started, only now. The weapon would be even harder to disable. Do you need more time? Hale asked, turning to Riley. She shook her head. Not enough. We're running out of time. Without another word, Hale reached for his communicator and spoke into it, his voice steady but urgent. All units, prepare for immediate evacuation. We need to leave. Now. It's too dangerous to stay here. Thaleen's eyes widened. Evacuation? Are you saying we can't shut it down? I didn't say that, Hale replied, his face hardening. But if we can't figure out how to fully disable it in the next few minutes, we'll have to get out of here before that weapon fires again. We're not risking the fleet. As he spoke, the lights around them dimmed for a split second, and the terminal beeped again, the flashing red warning signaling that the weapon was indeed attempting to reboot. Thaleen's heart skipped a beat. Can you override it? Thaleen asked Riley, voice tight with urgency. Riley was already scanning the terminal systems. I'm trying, but it's encrypted. I need more time. How much time? Thaleen pressed, feeling the weight of the moment bear down on her. A few more minutes, Riley said, her voice tense. Maybe less. If I can't break the encryption in time, we'll buy you that time, Hale said, cutting her off. Humanity's good at that. The human soldiers, who had been standing watch around the perimeter of the room, immediately moved into position, checking their weapons and preparing for any unexpected threats. They knew what was at stake. They had faced danger before, but this time, it was bigger than just them. It was about the entire galaxy. The last stand. Outside the control center, the once quiet, abandoned Dyson ring was now alive with movement. The walls shook again, and the hum of machinery grew louder. Thaleen could feel the very ground beneath her feet vibrating with the power being drawn from the ring. They didn't have much time. As Hale and the humans stationed themselves at the entrance, preparing for any counterattack, Thaleen stayed close to Riley. The engineer's face was drawn, her concentration unbroken, but Thaleen could see the sweat beading on her brow. This was the moment of truth. Riley let out a sharp breath. I've cracked part of the encryption. The weapon's reboot is tied to a backup power cord deep within the ring. If I can disable it, we'll stop the process. And if you can't? Thaleen asked, her heart thudding in her chest. I don't know. Riley's voice was low. If that core activates, we'll have no choice but to leave. Then we'll make sure you don't have to leave, Hale said firmly. We're not giving up yet. The tension in the air was palpable. Thaleen glanced around, meeting the eyes of the humans. They didn't flinch. There was no hesitation. Even as the ring's automated defense systems began to activate large mechanical drones flying through the corridors, their red lights glowing ominously, they stood ready. Stay close, Hale said to his team, eyes scanning the entrance. Riley, how much longer? Just a few more seconds. Riley's voice was tight with strain. Thaleen's heart raced. She turned to the entrance. There was a low, whirring sound as something moved just outside the room. The drones had arrived. Thaleen's pulse quickened. She wasn't a warrior. She had no combat training. She was a diplomat, a negotiator. But here, now, there was no time for negotiation. The galaxy's fate rested on their actions, and if she needed to fight, she would fight. "Cover me," Hale shouted. Before Thaleen could react, Hale and his team of humans moved forward, weapons drawn. They fired in unison, taking down the first wave of drones as they charged into the room. The crack of gunfire echoed through the corridors. Thaleen's mind raced as she watched the humans fight, their movements fast and precise, their bodies dodging and weaving in ways she couldn't have imagined. They fought like they had done this 1,000 times before. And maybe they had. She turned back to Riley. The engineer's fingers moved quickly over the terminal. Her brow furrowed in concentration. The time was running out. 30 seconds, Riley called out, her voice urgent. "I'm almost there." But the drones kept coming, relentless and overwhelming in number. Thaleen had no choice but to join the humans. She grabbed a blaster from one of the fallen drones and joined the fight, firing at the machines with trembling hands. For a moment, she was useless. But then she saw a drone break through the human line and head straight for Riley. "No!" Thaleen shouted, racing toward the engineer. She wasn't going to let this machine ruin their chances. She fired, hitting the drone's weak spot just as it lunged at Riley. The machine exploded in a shower of sparks and metal, collapsing into a heap on the floor. Riley didn't even flinch. "Thanks," she said, not taking her eyes off the terminal. Thaleen nodded. "Keep going." The final countdown. Seconds passed like hours. The sound of combat filled the air. The humans pushed forward, but the drones kept coming bigger, faster, and more aggressive. Thaleen fired again, then ducked behind a pillar, her heart pounding in her chest. 10 seconds, Riley yelled. Thaleen's mind raced. She could hear the steady, ominous hum of the backup power core activating deep within the ring. It was starting. Time was almost up. 5 seconds, Riley shouted. She was nearly there. Thaleen could see it in her eyes. She was going to make it. 3. Riley pressed a final key. There was a sharp beep, then the silence of deactivation. The countdown stopped. "Done," Riley said, her voice shaky with relief. The weapon systems powered down, and the drones stopped moving. The room went still, and the hum of the Dyson ring faded. The battle was over. The aftermath. Hale turned to the team, his expression one of quiet satisfaction. "Good work, everyone," he said, his voice firm. "We've done it. The weapon is shut down." Thaleen felt a rush of relief wash over her. They had succeeded. The galaxy had been spared, but as she looked around at the exhausted humans, she realized something. They had done it not because they were invincible, but because they were determined. They weren't just survivors, they were fighters. "Thank you," Thaleen said, her voice sincere. "We couldn't have done it without you." Hale nodded. "It's what we do. You don't leave anyone behind." The human soldiers began to gather their gear, checking their weapons one last time. They moved like well-oiled machines, but there was no arrogance in their steps. Only quiet pride. They had faced death, and they had won. The Dyson ring, once a silent relic of a forgotten empire, now sat dormant once more. The humans had saved them all. But Thaleen knew this wasn't the last time they would face such a challenge. "Let's go home," Hale said. "We've got more work ahead of us." And with that, the team moved toward the exit. The stars stretched out before them, endless and full of possibilities. The galaxy was safer, for now, but Thaleen knew that with humans like these in the galaxy, there was hope. The Deathworlders had saved the stars,